The room was wrapped in a sterile hush, broken only by the steady rhythm of machines breathing for the man who lay unmoving in the bed. White walls reflected a pale light that never seemed to change, day or night blurring into one long stretch of waiting. To the doctors and nurses who passed by, he was just another coma patient, Mr. Adrian Cole, unresponsive, wealthy, unlikely to wake. What no one knew was that behind his closed eyes, his mind was painfully alert. Every sound, every word, every sigh reached him. He had chosen this silence deliberately. After a sudden collapse that nearly killed him, Adrian had decided not to wake when he could. Years of being surrounded by people who loved his money more than his presence had left him empty and suspicious. In this bed, stripped of power and voice, he wanted to know who would remain when there was nothing to gain. Days turned into weeks. Visitors came at first, business partners, distant relatives, people who spoke loudly about recovery while checking their watches. Gradually, they stopped coming. Conversations outside his door shifted from hope to obligation, then to indifference. Adrian listened to it all, feeling a strange calm in being forgotten. That was when Lily began working the night shifts. She was different from the others, not because she worked harder, but because she spoke to him. Not the rehearsed encouragement nurses were trained to give, but soft, ordinary words meant to fill the silence. She told him when the rain tapped against the windows, when the cafeteria ran out of decent coffee, when her feet ached so badly she wondered how she would make it home. Each night, she pulled a chair closer to his bed and talked as if he were a friend. She spoke about her mother waiting for test results, about the rent that never seemed to get easier, about how she used to dream of becoming a doctor before life narrowed her path. Adrian heard the tired honesty in her voice, the kind people usually swallowed to survive. No one else shared their truth in this room. Doctors discussed him like a case study. Administrators discussed him like a liability. Lily spoke to him like a human being. Lying there, unable to respond, Adrian felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. He had built empires, signed deals worth millions, yet no one had ever trusted him with their unpolished fears. Lily never asked who he was or what he owned. She never imagined the life he'd lived. To her, he was just someone who couldn't interrupt, someone safe enough to listen. For the first time in years, Adrian wasn't being measured by his success or usefulness. He was simply present. And in the quiet glow of the night ward, pretending to sleep, he realized this silence was teaching him more about people than his fortune ever had. The night had deepened, and the hospital corridors were quiet, leaving only the soft hum of machines and the occasional footstep echoing through the halls. Lily stayed by Adrian's side longer than usual, her shoulders tense, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her uniform. She leaned closer to the bed, speaking in a voice so low it was almost a whisper, as if confessing secrets to the walls themselves. She told him about the exhaustion that clung to her like a second skin, how her shifts bled into one another, leaving her little time for herself, and how she worried constantly about her mother, whose illness was slowly consuming her. Each word carried the weight of unshed tears and the truth she had hidden from everyone else, the fear that no one would care if she fell apart. Then she confessed something deeper, something she had never dared voice aloud. She spoke of the mistakes she had made, the opportunities she had lost, the times she had faltered and felt the world would never forgive her. Her voice cracked as she admitted her desperation, her moments of hopelessness, and the quiet longing that someone, anyone, would truly see her, not just her struggles, but her as a person. She apologized for crying in front of him, for being vulnerable, for daring to hope he might notice her pain. Every syllable trembled with raw honesty, unpolished and fragile, and Adrian listened in silence, every heartbeat absorbing the weight of her words. In those confessions, Adrian recognized something he had not felt in years: connection. Not the hollow gestures of charity, not the superficial smiles of acquaintances, but the trembling, human truth of someone trusting him with the depths of their heart. He realized that Lily's honesty was a rare gift, untainted by expectation or gain. For the first time since waking in this bed, he felt the stirrings of something dangerous yet irresistible, a desire to respond, to comfort, to show that her words had not fallen into emptiness. Yet he remained still, pretending to sleep, knowing that any premature revelation could shatter the fragile trust she had placed in him. And as Lily spoke on, Adrian's mind wandered back through the years of his life, through boardrooms and contracts, through wealth and power, and he understood that no business deal had ever mattered as much as this moment. The sound of her voice, the honesty she poured into the sterile air of the night ward, was teaching him a lesson no fortune could buy, that listening without judgment, and being trusted without expectation, was a miracle all its own. For Adrian, lying still had become a choice not of concealment, but of devotion, an effort to witness the purest expression of humanity he had ever encountered. And in that quiet night, with the rain tapping softly against the windows, he felt the first flicker of hope, that perhaps he could learn to trust again, one whispered confession at a time. Morning light filtered through the hospital blinds, soft and hesitant, touching the pale walls with a warmth that contrasted sharply with the sterile chill of the night before. Adrian's eyes opened slowly, first to the blur of shapes and then to the world he had been listening to in silence for weeks. The nurses gasped, doctors rushed, and monitors beeped frantically, signaling a miracle: the coma patient had awakened. But Adrian's gaze wasn't on the flurry of panic around him, it searched for one person alone, the young nurse who had spoken her truth into the quiet of his nights. There she stood, frozen in the doorway, eyes wide with disbelief and fear, unsure if this awakening meant judgment or gratitude. "Lily," he said, his voice low but steady, carrying a warmth that surprised her, "come here." Her feet moved slowly, almost in a daze, as she approached, her hands trembling, unsure if she had the right to hope. Adrian looked at her, truly looked, for the first time without pretense, without the shield of wealth or detachment. "Thank you," he whispered, not for the care she had given, not for the hours spent at his bedside, but for the courage she had shown in sharing her fears and her heart so openly. "You trusted me with your truth when you didn't have to. You let me hear you, and that mattered more than anything." Tears welled in Lily's eyes as she realized that every confession she had poured into the night had been received, honored, and remembered. Adrian smiled softly, a gesture rare for a man whose life had been dominated by calculation and control. Then, in a quiet and unexpected gesture, he asked her for something extraordinary: forgiveness, for keeping silent, for hearing her heart without responding sooner, for knowing her pain but not speaking until the time was right. It was not an apology of weakness, but an acknowledgement of the bond they had formed, fragile yet unbreakable. In the weeks that followed, life began to shift in quiet but meaningful ways. Lily's mother received medical treatment she could never have afforded, debts disappeared quietly, and Lily returned to her studies, not as a charity case, but as someone given a second chance. Adrian recovered fully, but the true wealth he regained was not physical health or business control. It was the belief that kindness, honesty, and trust could still exist in the world. And as he watched Lily walk through the hospital corridors, a smile lighting her face, Adrian realized something profound. Sometimes, the smallest gestures of human courage, the whispered confessions, the soft truths, were enough to awaken not just a person, but a heart long closed to the world.